Cunningham is with us again to talk to us about what happened. Kenny, the point the lads were making there is the one that Stephen was making essentially was that he doesn't think that the pressure is going to get to Liverpool. I have to say, I would agree with that, given that this is a team who've come through a Champions League campaign. It's not like this is like all the other Liverpool teams over the last 30 years. This is the best one, and they are a team of seasoned winners who've gone toe-to-toe with Man City last year. So is the pressure going to be an issue for you, do you think?
No, well, it won't be. Pressure will be an issue, but will it be an issue in terms of where they're suddenly going to freeze and hand the title to Manchester City or another? No, they won't. Probably for the reasons that you're saying. It's just that experience year of last year of coming there so close last year to have the title kind of taken away from them. You just sense that hunger, that kind of drive, resolve, it's all been hardened over the summer, that kind of inner determination and even kind of belief off the back of the Champions League victory that they can go and do it this time around. It's pretty much inevitable, I think, after the summer that Liverpool were going to win a league title. You could sense it was just a case of when. And so it's no real surprise they're in the position that they're in. In terms of 9-point lead, yeah, I don't think too many were envisaging maybe that kind of disparity at this stage of the season. But for me, it's not so much. I think they'll go and win it. Obviously, I thought they'd win at the start of the season. But the position they're in at the moment, and looking at most importantly Manchester City's position, how kind of fragile they are in terms of injuries to key personnel. I'm thinking Laporte in particular. They were a little bit weak there before the start of the season, even with Laporte being fit. Him being out, they've got a real problem there in the defence. So for me, if I was in Liverpool's point of view, I'd be looking at Liverpool maybe even maintaining this lead and even extending it now between now and the end of the season. I think that's a real possibility. They're so strong. And it's our mental strength as well, just as much of their physical attributes, their collective strength, individual qualities which they have, which we've all spoken about. For me, it's the kind of the strong characters you're talking about, and just that kind of mental strength and determination, hunger now, almost like a primal thing that we're going to get this done this season. So yeah, to cut a long story short, I think it's theirs, and I think they'll go and win it.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk a little bit about City before we come back to Liverpool, because I talked about this a little bit earlier on, but they're back five: Claudio Bravo, Kyle Walker, Stones, Fernandinho and Angelino. This is the team that he was apparently forced to pick to play the biggest game of the season, and here we are 3 years into the Pep Guardiola experiment. He could certainly for the first 2 years sign any players in the world that he wanted, and it's an injury to Aymeric Laporte has left him in this position where they're so fragile at the back. So somebody somewhere has to take responsibility for how that squad was built and how it's not actually able to deal with the vagaries of a title race.
Yeah, well, they dealt with it last year. I would say that this is the same kind of predominantly kind of group of players that went and won the league title last year. So it's not as if this squad of players can't win. But they won last year, even with those kind of small deficiencies that we're talking about, particularly across the defensive line. Obviously, with Laporte fifth the majority of last season, he was their best defender for me. He was actually a good boy from Guardiola. Give him credit for that, but he kind of pulled the whole thing together from last season. Stones hasn't made those great strides forward under Guardiola. A lot of people thought that he would, and it is interesting that a lot of talk about how individual players have flourished under Guardiola, how they've improved. Sterling's probably the latest example of that. Predominantly, you're probably talking about forward-thinking players, kind of goal scorers. When you look at actually the defenders, not too many defenders I can think of offhand who Guardiola's brought into the football club, and 2-3 years down the road, you could say, do you know what, he's a far better defender now than when he was when Guardiola first brought him into the football club. And he can make that argument for Stones. He can make it for Walker as well. He has been a reasonably successful signing, Walker, but in terms of defensive attributes, that hasn't improved at all. So yeah, there was real weaknesses across the defensive line, even bringing Mendy in or whoever at left back. I don't think Mendy is the strongest defensive. I don't think he would have greatly strengthened that team. Otamendi, of course, doesn't strengthen the team when he comes in. So the problem was pre-season not bringing a centre half into the football club. Talk about he was interested in Maguire, didn't follow through on that. I'm not exactly sure Maguire was the exact prototype fit for me. The young boy at Ajax, for me, I was very surprised they didn't push strongly to get him delict into the football club. Yes, very young, but an outstanding defender who was only going to get better. So that was the mistake. Whether it was Guardiola's or the recruitment team, I'm not too sure, Ger, but certainly they're paying for it now.
We talked about it last week on the show where I was making the point that maybe they're a bit unfortunate to go out of the Champions League against Spurs in the fashion that they did, but the counter-argument was that their defence was so poor that night that actually that's what happens in the Champions League. You come up against world-class strikers who are able to do random things, and unless you actually have a really solid defence, you can't really aspire to win the Champions League either. And so at the moment it looks like all their eggs are in the Champions League basket for this season and whether or not it's going to be a success. And on the basis of what their defence was yesterday, and maybe the defence improves when they get their keeper back, and maybe this is a bit premature, but it doesn't appear as if they've got a Champions League winning defence at the moment either.
I think there's a stronger argument for saying they're still contenders in the Champions League. Obviously the keeper comes back in the next few weeks. Laporte comes back to get him fit for the tail end of the Champions League. It's not about how you start the Champions League, Gerard, it's how you finish second half of the season. And Laporte coming back into that team, the goalkeeper certainly strengthens them. The problem is not just with Manchester, it's how they play as well. Gerard, sometimes you have a small weakness in your defence, you can kind of protect yourself a little bit in terms of how you set up. If you're nice and compact, maybe you drop deep to the edge of your penalty box. You don't open yourself up. You don't leave those players isolated. I'm talking about kind of Otamendi here and those defenders that we're talking about. If the collective defensive unit is strong enough, you can kind of get away with it at times. You can manage. But the way City play, they open themselves up. They send their full backs high up the pitch. Centre halves get exposed in 1v1 situations. So if you have a weakness, particularly a centre half, playing at a club like Manchester City, the way Guardiola wants to play, it's extremely difficult to do that with those small weaknesses, which he has. But the ball retention is that good at times. They dominate possession so much, score so many goals. Again, it's not as if this team hasn't won. The surprise to me yesterday was Guardiola actually changed. The big surprise was he changed in terms of the tactical setup. He actually went 4-4-2, really. He played De Bruyne as a number 10 in behind Aguero, and that surprised me. And I think that hindered Manchester City more so than anything else. Gary Neville made a big thing after the game. Very surprised Guardiola didn't go to a back three and really surprise us. But for me, actually, he needed to stick with the tried and tested 4-3-3, because I think they weren't as fluid. They didn't look as fluid in possession, not as cohesive as when they played that V-shaped in midfield. For me, it would have been Rodri at the base yesterday with Gundogan and De Bruyne. If you're going to play those two, if Silva wasn't fit enough to play those two in those advanced positions, because City at their best in possession is when their wide men are stretching opposition defences across the pitch, and De Bruyne and they, in other words, Gundogan and Silva, they're making those darting runs in behind opposition fullbacks in centre halves, really causing problems, really asking questions of opposition teams. Does the centre half come out and deal with it? Does the holding midfielder have to drop in there? I think that would have been a problem for Fabinho yesterday if he had to do that. He's a very good player for being, but one of his small deficiencies is a lack of mobility. And I think he would have struggled to deal with those runs of Gundogan or De Bruyne into those inside left and right channels. But by playing De Bruyne as a number 10, I think it let Liverpool off the hook a little bit. And for me, kind of City suffered a little bit because of it. They weren't at their best and probably didn't create as many clear-cut opportunities as they generally would have done in their normal kind of setup.
Yeah, so they didn't actually take the opportunity to exploit the weakness in... I'll come back to that, the Liverpool side of that in 1 second, but this isn't the first time that Guardiola has changed things for a big game. Sometimes you feel like maybe he gets in his own head.
It's an easy one after the fact. Like I said, a lot of commentaries. I enjoyed the commentary yesterday, but a lot of the talk before was he's got to change it. He can't go into this game with that kind of a flat back four with a pairing of Stones and Ferradino with someone as inexperienced as kind of Alan Gini. You have to try something a little bit different. Now he did try something a little bit different, but it wasn't across the back four line. I wouldn't agree with that statement in terms of should have gone to a back three. If a back three meant bringing Otamendi into the defensive setup, for me, you're never going to be strengthened by bringing Nicolas Otamendi into the team, no matter what system that you play. So for me, the back four was the way to go forward, and there's nothing you can do about the deficiency you've got across the defensive line. All you can do is play the system which best suits the players, which means you dominate possession of football, and which is going to give you the opportunity to create chances and score goals. I think their only chance yesterday, City, was to actually outscore Liverpool. When I saw that City team, I thought, well, you're probably looking at, I would have given a bet on Liverpool scoring at least 2 goals against that Manchester City team. So the only chance they had was actually to outscore them. And by kind of tweaking the system, which he did, for me, that kind of restricted Manchester City a little bit in their ability to go and get 2, 3, 4 goals, or wherever they need to go and get a point or 3 points against Liverpool yesterday.
Last time you were with us, Kenny, you blew up the internet when you were talking about Fabinho.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Hell hath no fury, like a Liverpool fan scorned. They took it personally that you were pointing out that Fabinho...
Oh dear.
Yeah. You said, looking at the goals Liverpool have conceded this season, it's been down to Fabinho's lack of alertness, which isn't exactly that controversial. But then I'm not totally convinced about him in that holding midfield position. Obviously, you still think he's a good player, but did City not do enough to try and get at him, or did he just play well?
No, he had a... if you want to talk about Fabinho, his performance yesterday probably typified what I'm talking about Fabinho in terms of his strengths and his weaknesses. Obviously a brilliant individual goal, that was fantastic, but put that to the side. In possession, very easy on the eye. Good little fulcrum for Liverpool there when they're in possession. They can pop the ball into him. He gets himself in a half turn, keeps the ball moving very efficiently. There was one turn on the halfway line first half. City put the squeeze on him. Gundogan, he just dropped his shoulder, turned on his inside and just left him for dead and played a forward pass. Was brilliant, and that's the strength of Fabinho. But if you look at his defensive side of his game yesterday, don't get clouded by the fact that it was a great victory for Liverpool. I mean, he should have got booked after 20 minutes. Gundogan dropped his shoulder on and went past him, and that lack of mobility, you could see it there, couldn't plant his feet and recover, actually hacked him down, should have got a yellow card. If you looked at a couple of chances City got first half, De Bruyne put a ball through his legs for Angelino, hit the post. De Bruyne spun him on the halfway line. He tried to win a ball in front, got it wrong. De Bruyne spun away from played Aguero win, who flashed a shot across the goal. And even second half, I mean, Sterling danced around him a couple of times and possibly could have scored. De Bruyne had done him on the outside, put a ball across his penalty box for Aguero, should have scored. And even the goal that Manchester City scored, I thought he was a little bit weak in his defending against De Bruyne inside the box. So, I mean, you put it on me there. That's just off the top of my head. There's about 6 or 7 situations there for me. Actually, could have done better and almost indirectly caused his team a goal. But for me, look, the argument isn't that Fabinho's a good or bad player. He's a very good player, but you need to understand the qualities which he has. And Klopp clearly feels those attributes which I've spoken about, he values them more than the defensive. The lack of defensive qualities which he has. And it's interesting, you look at all the successful championship winning teams, maybe the last kind of 10 years, Fernandinho's probably the best example of Manchester City, how strong he is defensively. Kante at Leicester and Chelsea, even back to, I'm thinking, Matic at Chelsea, all better defenders than Fabinho on that central area of the pitch. But where Fabinho has the edge on those 3 players is in terms of the quality of his passing, his ability to receive the ball in tight areas, keep the ball moving and just work the ball up the pitch. He's a decent reader of the game as well, so he's a very good player in possession. I am a fan of him, but he makes me a little bit nervous when Liverpool haven't got possession of the ball. That's why I make the argument in certain games, for me, Henderson is the better option, that holding midfield position. But it's not a case of if Fabinho is a good or bad player. He is a very good player, of course he is. It's just a case of which of those attributes which he has, which do you value more. And clearly at the moment, those attributes which he has when Liverpool are in possession, Klopp clearly feels best kind of complements the players around them.
You can see why, if you're Klopp, though, that you would want that on your team, because last season that was something that the last 18 months basically people have said that central midfield area for Liverpool is not creative enough. You know, they're not really a team who likes to have the ball, but with him in it, at least you can keep the ball for a little while and you can play a slightly different style. You can temper your style mid-game if you need to.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's a very good argument. So I've no problem with that argument as long as you recognise those small deficiencies in Fabinho's game, and you say, well, yeah, I know that, I understand that, but in terms of what he brings to the team, when we have the ball, his ability to receive the ball off centre halves, off fullbacks on the inside, unlike Jordan Henderson, who generally his first touch takes him back towards the goal, and maybe it's a backwards or a sideways pass. That isn't always the case with Fabinho. His head's up a little bit more. He's checking his shoulder. He can receive the ball on the half turn. He can actually break the lines with his passing forward. It doesn't have to be a scintillating 40-yard daisy cutter across the pitch. Sometimes it's just a 10-15 yards forward pass, that just breaks the lines and gets the likes of maybe Salah or Mane coming on the inside, the ball into their feet, and that's massive. You're playing half a dozen of those balls during the course of the 90 minutes. That's really significant. So yeah, you're absolutely right. His ability to keep possession of the ball, keep calm, and just keep the ball moving in those situations, I think it is an asset to the team, and it's why he's in the team ahead of Henderson in that respect, because he is better at that, as you've mentioned. Like I said, it's just one man's wine is another man's poison. You have to just, every single game, you have to look and say, which of those players do I want in the team at any given time? And he's shown a lot of loyalty towards Fabinho last year, and I can understand why. But for me, maybe it's just me, defensive mentality, whatever it is. When I look up the pitch, what type of player I want to see in front of me, particularly in games when you're coming against sides of the strength of Manchester City, you're not going to dominate possession. You're going to be penned in for long periods. For me, it's the player with the better defensive attributes, which would be the one maybe I'd be earning to be sitting in front of me. But it's a great position for Klopp to be in, to have players of those individual qualities who he can go to week in, week out, and it's the strength of the squad. The different options he has now in that central area of the pitch. We haven't spoken about Oxlade-Chamberlain, Keita, top quality players as well, who we can bring into the team. So the squad strength's so good at the moment. I mean, it's it must be a joy to be a Liverpool supporter.
Yeah, absolutely. Kenny, great stuff this morning. Thanks a million for joining us.
Nice one, lads.
Kenny Cunningham, give us some thoughts there.
I don't think the Liverpool fans got the apology that they wanted.
No, they didn't.
Did they?
Didn't. No.
Definitely, when I saw
double down.
When it was mentioned last night that he was on, there was a lot of comments. It was like, I mean, I suppose there is something about the football fan, even when their team is successful, that they need a focal point sometimes. They need to be shoving it to someone.
Yeah.
When their team scores, they're like, now at the moment it's like,
especially when you're winning.
Cunningham, this is it now. Like we have to stick it to Cunningham. So Fabinho scores in the moment of celebration, rather than drinking in the moment, like reveling in the majesty of the strike. It's like, let's aim some invective in the direction of that pundit who expressed an opinion that may not have been 100% complimentary towards my club.
He's very wise in that he's not on social media, or at least if he is, he manages to keep.
He's not tailoring his actions accordingly, Dan.
Exactly.
He's not as a rampant populist.
Yeah. And he had 6 or 7 good points there.
Yeah, and to be honest, some of the responses is just a bit sensitive. I mean, the suggestion that Kenny is like a wind-up merchant. I mean, no, he actually tends to actually be a pundit who offers a sort of a justification for his opinion. Now, you can chip away at it. Yeah, absolutely.
The Liverpool fan sites were all very eager to put it out there.
Yeah.
Because, it does good business for them.
It does.
Because literally nobody else saying anything about Liverpool other than, wow, what a great team.
They're amazing.
What a runaway train success you are.
There must be someone that we can pin to this virtual dressing room. It's not even a dressing room wall. Like, it's more just for the to get the punters aggrieved. I have had a couple of people in touch with me. It was like, get on to Cunningham there. It's like,
yeah, there you go.
He's explaining his views, like he's offering a footballing viewpoint.
Yeah.